Welcome to this episode of the Xavier Files as a part of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast where we're chatting with the voice of some of our favorite characters in X-Men 97, including Mojo and Leech, David Errigo Jr. I'm JC.
And I'm Rod, and I'm excited to introduce our guest, David.
I know him. I am him, actually. Yeah. Hey, guys, this is David Errigo Jr., and I am really looking forward to this. This should be fun.
Yeah, and usually we can say, like, oh, voice of Sunspot, voice of Xavier. You're like 5, 6, 7, I don't know, like every extra. I learn about a new one every time I meet you.
I pay them well. Pay them for opportunities, and they gave me a bulk discount.
You're the reverse of the other actors.
Yeah, the other guys, they get paid for the more stuff they do. I pay to do more. And luckily, like I said, they gave me a bulk discount. They were like, look, if you get 5, we're gonna cut you a deal. I said, okay, but what if I also want to be the efforts for some of Ronan's stuff? And they're like, we'll throw that in for free.
Yeah, like, okay. You'll get a meatball sub.
It's that frequent voice card. Come in, you do it 5 times, and you get a free voice.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, some real quick housekeeping. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find. This podcast started with the original 1992 X-Men the animated series, building up to the release of X-Men 97. But since that season, the first season is over, we're going to be chatting with David's characters, and his biggest moments from
David's
season 1.
characters.
About David's characters.
This, I don't know why we just cannot get
Wait,
this
you mean
line
Leech
right?
does not need to hold a conversation today?
I was going to say, that typo actually worked out this time around because even before we were recording, you were coming in and out of 7 different characters anyway, so
yeah,
we
that'll
talked to all of them. We talked to the characters.
I really can't help it.
So
everything is going to be responded to in first person.
Except Leech, because he uses the third person anyway.
Yeah, there you go. So there may be there's going to be spoilers. We're talking about 97. It's impossible not to talk about spoilers.
Oh no.
Don't hold your breath, kid. Or maybe do. I don't know. If you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the show, and come back.
And if you're not already, please follow us on social media. Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, and Facebook. And follow us on your favorite podcast services. Let's get into this conversation.
Do it, because subscriptions are lifeblood.
Oh, this is going to be the best interview ever.
Or the most scattered. You guys are going to be like, oh my God, what did we do?
It's going to be hard to be the most scattered. It might be the most scattered interview. We've definitely had episodes go completely off the rails, so I'm not as worried about that. So obviously we are an X-Men focused podcast, and we're going to be talking about roles from X-Men 97, but you have such a big and impressive credit list. What are other roles in your voice acting career that you're super proud of that other people may recognize you from if they don't know your name on a household basis just yet?
Yeah, sure. Well, one that sort of was like my skeleton key, opened up a lot of doors for me in the industry, was taking over the role of Ferb Flynn Fletcher in Phineas and Ferb. And if you haven't heard of him, he's a nice, soft-spoken British fellow. And that was just like, sometimes folks don't want to like use you or bring you in for projects until you have some receipts. And that's like the golden ticket of receipts, because Phineas and Ferb was like the biggest kids show on the planet for years. So being able to join that cast and be a part of that world, and I came from a fan standpoint with that one too. I had already loved the show for years before I got to be involved. Perry the Platypus has been my text tone since like 2012, and I didn't get involved until 2017. But like that has been a major one. In fact, it even helped me to get involved in a show called Ridley Jones, where I played a dodo bird called Dudley, who sounds like this. Dudley is basically Ed Wynn without the lisp, and I had so much fun recording that, and I actually, when I auditioned him, I auditioned him with the lisp, and that was fun, and that's what we did. And then I walked in, and the casting director goes, "Hey, this is David, he's the new voice of Phineas." I go, "Ferb?" She goes, "Ferb." And Chris Nee, the creator of Ridley Jones, goes, "Dan and Swampy, I love those guys." And she walks up to me and gives me a hug, which that just does not happen. Right. In auditions, you don't get that sort of like immediate camaraderie with people that you just met. And so we start, and they're like, "Okay, so can you do it without the lisp?" And I was like, "Of course. Yeah, it's just this then." And that's fun, and we like to use it. And they're like, "Okay, great. Yeah, yes. We play our cards really close to the chest. Yes." And wound up booking that, got me 60 episodes of TV and an Emmy nomination, which was unexpected and wonderful. And then another show, a wonderful show that I've gotten to be a part of, is Tiny Toons Luniversity,
And you have multiple roles on that show.
Yeah, I play Hampton J. Pig, as well as Pluciferous Von Mallard Duck. But because the masses suffer from speech impediments, I tend to go by Plucky. And also Arnold the Pitbull, he's one.
Guy named Chillis Cat, who's basically me. John Lee Dove, who's the dove who invented the pencil. And like, I think I did something like 15, 16 different roles on that show.
Jeez.
That's incredible, because there's, maybe 30 roles in grand total, and you're over the 50% mark?
I mean, there's a lot of characters. They brought in a lot of wonderful talent for that. In fact, J.P. Karliak, who plays Morph, does a number of roles too. He's really fantastic as, it's Marvin the Magical Mouse, or Merlin the Magical Mouse, maybe. He has this great episode where he plays opposite Eric Bauza as Buster Bunny, and then he's this big Russian dog. Like, they used J.P. all over the place as well. We've gotten so lucky. We just get to do umpteen different things because they ask, and we love to play. Yeah, those are
luck.
fun.
Clearly, it's skill, because I can't remember myself sometimes. You just went through like 12 different characters in like a single sentence.
It's the perks of growing up a weird kid. Because I like to just make sounds and make people laugh if I can.
And that's really cool that Phineas and Ferb was like a breakthrough role. Actually, I met your boss. I was at his house for a house party this time last year.
Oh, nice.
And I just missed Phineas and Ferb as like a viewer. I think I just graduated college, so I was like trying to like figure out how I was going to pay for
Well, I have
housing.
to tell you, it is still streaming on Disney Plus, where you watched X-Men 97.
Right.
So there is no reason for you to not go back.
Now, but it's a little spoiled for me because I got to see, and I have video on my phone of Dan singing Perry the Platypus like on his guitar on his back porch.
I mean, he's got to stop doing that.
Yeah, right. I think I was with Chloe Bean as another like influencer, and either her or Rebecca Rogers asked like, "Hey Dan, is it hard to write songs?" And he's like, "No." And we're like, "Okay, fuck you."
Not for you.
And so, because I'm a songwriter, it's my main gig. You know, I'm like, even though I do it every day, it's like hard. And then Dan's like, he just reaches up, grabs a guitar. He's like, I wrote this with Swampy like in an afternoon. He plays like one of the most iconic songs of the 2000s. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to go work at Target now then, I guess.
You know, he's one of those people who can't not create.
Yeah.
You know, there are definitely folks in the industry, there are actors, there are writers, there are singers that like they do a thing and they're super stoked to have just done that thing. And they're like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't think Dan could sit still for an afternoon, much less any sort of span of time where he would just go, I'm good. I think he has to create. I think that's why we see the success that he's got on like TikTok and things like that. He's like, I'm a storyteller. It's authentic to me. Because we all see the other people that are out on social media and they're like, I have to post.
Yeah.
Like, I have to feed the algorithm.
Rod and I were literally just at VidCon the past weekend from when we recorded this episode. So, yeah, we get that hustle by all means.
Yeah, well, and there are people that it's organic to, and you can see it, and that's why they're, like, magnetic, and why they have as many followers as they have. But then there are also people that are feeling like it's an obligation, and that comes through too, which that's why I'm like so not focused on social media. I post pictures of bugs that I've taken pictures I'll post, you know, I've got a project coming, or look at this artsy photograph. But if I had to sort of feed the beast and try to be clever or funny or charming in some sort of way, and like I felt like I had to, it would drain all of the life out of me, and it would make the room go, oh, screw that guy. We don't like that guy.
Yeah.
But like, then there are also days where like this weekend I was at a convention and Sarah Natachenny's a pal, and she's always running around like, oh, I found an Ash. Hey, did you know I'm the voice of Ash Ketchum? And it's funny and it's clever. And so I did this thing. Oh my God, I found her. It's Sarah Natachenny. Hi Sarah. And it's her, and it's her fans. And oh my gosh. And she's like, get out of my face. And like just a stupid thing like that. Sure, I'll do that because the impulse hit me. But I'm not going to try and find ways to walk up to everybody and sort of recreate that bit. Nothing against anybody who's doing it, except something slightly against the people that are doing it out of a sense of obligation. I want to give you the gift of telling you, you don't have to. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People who have to create, like absolutely in their souls have to create. Okay, I understand that. Do it.
Yeah.
You're awesome. We can feel that, and we're championing you.
Yeah, and that's Dan, because not only does he post himself, he'll make the most mundane things seem so entertaining.
Yeah.
Then also he posts on behalf of like his friends. Like, do you know Carolyn Dutton?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
a friend of his. Yeah. Like she's like you. She's like social media, and then so Dan just makes content on her behalf. Sometimes on his channel, sometimes on hers.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
And she's trying to get me to keep trying to.
Oh no, we don't talk to Kara. No, we don't talk to her
right.
at all.
Yeah.
No, just the worst. Super mean. Lied to me during a game. The
you
game
heard it
was
here.
about lying, but man,
but yeah,
she
so-
lied to me really, and I've never forgiven her.
Was it
You
Mafia?
hear that, Kara?
And you
hear
just
that?
Like, I'm not Mafia.
It was a card game. It was a card game about like passing the queen through the thing, and it's just deception. And Mikey Reed, who's Vince's really good friend, Vincent, who plays Phineas. His best friend and roommate, Mikey Reed, taught us this game, and Carolyn was over, and she deceived me very successfully. And
Did she tell you Dan invented the minions?
of course she did.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is tattooed on her forehead. She just has a really good cover up. Yeah. So every now and then she'll just walk into a room, say,
Excuse me, can I have a paper towel, a wet one?
take the paper towel, wipe all the cover up off, and it's just Dan invented the minions. And we're all just trying to spread the gospel of Dan didn't. And here she is with Dan invented the minions on her like, who would make that choice without it being true? Carolyn
Right.
Dutton. That's who would.
There you go.
So
She's gonna be like, we don't know each other well enough for you to be slighting my name on a podcast.
I know her well enough. I'm going to text her this conversation immediately afterwards.
Hilarious.
So before Phineas and Ferb hit, do you have any anecdotes about the hustle of auditioning and fighting for roles and stuff like that in the VO space?
Oh, sure. I mean, more so in the theater space, like, because I came from a musical theater background. Right out of college, I worked at a theater in Arizona. I was a graphic designer and photographer there while also doing shows for them at night. And over like 2.5 years, I did something like 10 main stage productions with this company and a few others around town and things like that. And that was like learning a master's class or a master's program of how to be an actor. Not how to act necessarily, but how to be an actor, how to carry yourself when you're in a leadership position, how to be a great chorus member, how to interact with, board members at things like that. Because you see different people come in and out from out of town, and some do it really successfully, and some a little less so, and then you don't see them again, and you're like, lessons. So then going to New York, I was auditioning for tons of musical theater. I did some regional stuff. I got down to the creative team a couple times for Jersey Boys. I did something called Frankie Camp. So that was a lot of fun. But like for me, musical theater was kind of this thing that I kept doing because people kept letting me do it. I thought I loved it, and I thought it was going to be the thing that I was going to do for my whole life. And when you're auditioning, a lot of times people are like, you have to learn to love to audition. You have to just learn to love that. You have to embrace the idea that this is your 2 minutes to act that day. And I was like, you are full of shit. No one loves to audition. And here's the thing, I should really find ways to apologize to all of those people who I said were full of it, because when I started doing voiceover, when I started getting those auditions, every piece of copy that came into my inbox made me happier. So I think my real problem with not loving auditioning in musical theater was that I didn't need to do musical theater in my soul. I was doing it because I was capable and people kept letting me, but I couldn't find the love because I didn't truly have the love. But then, man, still, even today, I had to, I was doing auditions right up to the edge of this, and I'm sitting there cracking myself up. I'm like enjoying the challenges of each different bit of copy. That's a meandering answer. It's all get out, isn't it?
Yeah, all good.
So yeah, tons of auditions started to come in when I got into onto the roster at SBV, best agents in the world. But before that, when I was really trying to cut my teeth in VO, there was this movie called Richard the Stork about a sparrow who thought he was a stork. I got that through, one of the pay-to-play sites, whatever, which now, of course, knowing about them, I loathe them for their predatory nature. But it was part of where I cut my teeth. It is part of the journey. I woke up smiling before this audition. I rode the subway, because I was still in Manhattan at the time. I rode the subway grinning. I did the audition beaming, and I always say I left glowing like Eddie Murphy in The Golden Child. And if you haven't seen that movie, do yourself the favor. It's a lot of fun. But I walked out of this place, and it was like 23rd and 5th. That's where 4K is in New York, that did Yu-Gi-Oh! And all of that. Get on the phone. I'm walking toward Union Square, and I call my dad, and I go, I think I found the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And so those kinds of auditions, those kinds of opportunities that I realized made my heart, beat faster. Those kinds of auditions just drew me more and more and more toward this thing that I knew I had to do. And the fun thing about sort of time and perspective with, say, the Jersey Boys thing, right? Because I was pretty disappointed when that didn't turn out at the time. But when I look back, I go, that was never mine. That was always supposed to go to someone who has to do musical theater. Mm-hmm. And I think it did, and I'm so grateful that it left me the opportunity to move to LA to really just head down, push forward into this thing that makes me feel like one of the luckiest people on earth.
That's awesome.
There's no smooth way for me to transition to the next question, so I'm just going to do that.
What? I made it so easy. My rambling answer made it so easy and seamless to do things in a row.
It was so heartfelt for me to literally just go to, so now talking about X-Men. So as far as the X-Men property overall, how familiar were you with it? Was it just the cartoon? Was it the movies? Was it toys? Or were you like full-fledged into comics for the property before you became involved with this project?
I would say I was full-fledged into the series. I've certainly watched it all the way through. I had all the DVDs. I grew up on the show. Like, it was airing during my childhood, and I had the Pizza Hut Night of the Sentinels VHS and just played it over and over and over. I was deep into the toys, lots of the toys, very spoiled in that way. I think I had like at least 8 different versions of Wolverine, and the Beast that wouldn't consistently flip, but boy did he try. I had like a monster version of Rogue. I had Gambit, who had the light up cards. Do you remember the light up series of the toys?
Yeah.
And there was a Psylocke who had the light up sword too. I was definitely someone who loved all that, and the trading cards. Fleer Ultra.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have the coffee table book that is all the Jim Lee cards, just like as like
Excellent.
a little like 5x5 book. It's fantastic.
I actually, because of some of the marketing for X-Men 97, I took the time and I drew up my own Mojo card that I can, sign for people at cons and things like that. And Aisling, one of the visual development or the one of the artists from the show, who I met at a couple of the events that have happened out here in Hollywood, she was like, do you want me to filter that through the Mojoverse filter? And I was like, yes, please. Ooh. So Aisling took it and made it even better, but it's my drawing and it looks like the card style, which is cool.
Oh, that's incredible.
But I was in love with all of that stuff. And, I had a good handful of comics, but not a crazy amount. I would pick up Spider-Man a little more often, or I've always been much more inclined to get like a small run of something, like the Amalgam comics when they came out, because that was a limited kind of thing. Marvel DC All Access, which was sort of something that came after that. That was a full set that I grabbed. Small runs of storylines. Do you remember when Spidey was having identity crisis and
Yes.
he became Ricochet and those other characters?
Oh yeah, there was the one who was like all black and gooey, and the guy who had the gold armor. I forgot all the alternate names for them, but
Looked sort of like a wasp or dragonfly or something like that with his little wings.
One was like a beetle vibe to it.
Yeah. So
God,
yes.
that was an interesting era in comics.
I had seen and interacted with the mythology a little bit, yes.
So the audition process starts for you. What is the audition process for you, as you ended up voicing multiple characters in the series? Are you given multiple ones at the beginning? Did they come to you with specific ones in mind? Walk us through what that was like.
Well, in a weird way, my audition process for this started with The Witcher: Nightmare of the Wolf, because that was Meredith Lane and Beau DeMaio working together. And they brought me in as young Vesemir, who, oh my gosh, I'm going to forget who played the adult Vesemir. He's in our show too. He's Bastion.
Oh, Theo.
Oh, Theo James.
Theo, yeah. So Theo was the adult. And I was the young one, again, doing just a young British fellow, but of course young Vesemir, he had a little more assertiveness than Ferb does, and he was quite a bit more outspoken and had to do more things like, oh yes, let's get some honey cakes. And Jen Hale was my opposite because she was the young version of his sort of love interest. So we worked together on that, had a fantastic time, and few years, I don't even really know how many years later, this started to percolate, the X-Men, and they sent out an audition and they're like, hey, we need a Leech. And I was like,
I think I can get pretty close to this.
and did the audition, sent it off, and luckily, they brought me in, and Bo came, and I guess at this point, he wasn't coming to like all of the sessions, he was just coming to some, and he made the point to come in and be like, hey, I am so happy to work with you again. And as soon as Meredith told me you were auditioning, I said, bring him in, he's a known quantity. And I was like, oh, that's so nice of you, because that's like the best thing that actors can hear. And he was like, and we're gonna be throwing you a lot more auditions and seeing what else, because we've got Gladiator coming up, and I was like, oh, well, I think Gladiator would be probably something a little more like this, yeah. And he goes, yeah, yep. I was like, cool.
Like, anyway, how's your afternoon? You want to stay for a couple more hours?
Well, and they were so sweet. They were like, who would you want to play given your choice? And I said, to be honest, I always thought it would be cool to be Nate Gray, X-Man. I know you've got Cable, probably got Cable, but if you don't have X-Man, I would love to do that. And eventually they let me audition because he shows up in the finale as a youngster.
Oh yes, the young version of Nate.
Yeah, not as X-Man or whatever, but the young. Yeah.
I was like, did we miss an Easter egg?
No, sorry. I did not just spoil anything. I know nothing. I have recorded nothing from season 2, truly.
Yes, young Cable is absolutely
the thing that you
Yeah.
see, I got to read for. Obviously, not me. Otherwise, it would be listed. And the guy sounds great. But that's something that I said in the initial, and they're like, okay, cool. So I got to do that Leech session and like a radio voice and some random soldiers and whatever in that first session, and then they brought me back for episode 5, and I was like, oh man, this is either gonna get people to lean in or walk away, and it seems like it got more people by a large margin to lean in than vice versa. And then, as time went by, they wound up putting out a call for Mojo, and I was like, ooh, I sure do love a crazy guy. And that was a requested audition. Ironically, I wound up booking him and Mr. Mixius from My Adventures with Superman within like 2 weeks of each other. And they're both these like cosmic sort of tricksters. And of course, there's different things you dial up for either of them, but I thought that was sort of an interesting bit of timing in just my voiceover journey. That's meandering too.
One of those was the punch card 5th voice thing.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, then Gladiator, I can't remember if they just used that initial, like me being in the booth and going, yes, I think this would probably be Gladiator, to decide they were going to bring me in for him, or if I read for it. I really can't remember. But on that day, they had me do the Royal Messenger as well. And then, we're doing some ADR, and they're like, hey, look, we got all these guys getting their asses handed to them. You want to... Sure. Yeah, why not? A little bit of Ronan with his... you just... Whatever they ask you to do, you do it.
We loved when we were watching, I believe it was Bright Eyes, and I don't know if you filled in for any of those soldiers, but there were just certain soldier screams that were happening in the background that were full lines of dialogue, but they were so low you didn't know what was being said unless you had the captions on. Oh. And it's the most horrifying thing to read what those people were actually saying as Rogue is like throwing tanks at them and such.
I don't think I did any for Bright Eyes.
Okay.
I think I'm just
one of the Kree.
2 or wait, hold on. Is that the same episode? No, that's not the same. Is that episode 7 after we've seen
Bright
Charles?
Eyes is 7. Yep.
Yeah. So then yes, I am not in that one because I'm in 2, 4, 5, 6, I think.
Got it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So would love to kind of go into a little bit of a deep dive on each of the 4 main characters that you did.
Sure.
So we have heard you discuss at events, Mojo was a combination of 3 different takes on the character. Would you mind diving into that? Because
Yeah, not at all.
As you were doing it live, of swapping between the three, because obviously we know this is a different take on Mojo compared to something that hit a little more of a stereotype in the 90s.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so when we started, they were like, we don't know exactly what we want out of this, but we want kind of a combination of the auditions that you sent. Because I can't help myself but send more than one. and usually in a voiceover session, you do an ABC take or an AB take, and you're ostensibly doing the same character, but with different impulses, right? So if the line is, I'm going to go to the store today. I'm going to go to the store today. I'm going to go to the store today. Those are all kind of like the same guy, but he's got different thoughts or whatever. We did a very different thing with Mojo, which was the A take was essentially Ghostface from Scream, you know, that whole, what's your favorite scary movie? Yeah, it's me, Mojo, your favorite interdimensional, da-da-da-da-da, you know, the executive.
I've met a TV executive that has that exact same voice. So,
I bet. So then that was our A take for every line. We sort of leaned into that sort of more subdued, which is how you get to the lines like stakes, which they cut in, and it's great. Like, it's really fun. And then the second was... And I can never remember exactly what they said, so I sort of used the comparison of, like, Genie in his unpredictability in Aladdin. Robin Williams doing that, and, you know, then you've got, you're my gamer girl in a gamer world. You know, just that sort of enthusiastic thing that's maybe a little unpredictable, maybe a little off-kilter, and that was always the B take. And then the C take, I've decided to describe as, like, Jim Carrey playing Robotnik with many drugs. And that's where you get things like, and I'm going to back way off the mic here, but the spiral! You know, that's just so over the top. And I hope I didn't hurt anybody's ears. You guys can mix that down.
Just impressed you made that word like 7 syllables. That was amazing.
You know, you just add letters. And it's really funny when I sign Mojo Pops, I'll do that. I'll write like SPIR 15 A's L.
But they're all like alternating caps.
7 exclamation points.
Some are just in cursive. It's fine, you know.
Oh, that's a good call. I'll start trading those in. So you get this sort of almost unpredictable hodgepodge of those takes, and I think by and large it's the B take. But you get these sort of wild outreach moments of either high or low, which I think was a really smart decision on Meredith's part. But, you know, I think she's the bee's knees.
That's why she's the pro. Everybody talks so highly of her.
Oh, like the best out there. So stinking good. I mean, this project could have been a colossal failure, right? If the team decided to put together just like voice matches or just they just didn't have the leadership that Meredith brings. Had they had a subpar director, no matter how good these scripts are, and I'm someone who generally tends to say, if the writing is good, the acting doesn't even have to be that good, which I do think is true if the writing is excellent. But this show could have been fine if all they brought in was some subpar casting and some subpar voice direction. This show is incredible. It is getting the reputation of the best thing Marvel has made in years. Like, that is in no small part due to, yes, the writing, absolutely, but also Meredith Lane, who assembled a cast that, even in the moments of voice match, it's more about feeling the same than sounding exactly the same. I had a chat with Ray Chase about this, and he's like, yeah, you do voice match. You know that I'm not 100% on the voice of Cyclops. I said, yeah, but you don't sound an ounce differently. Even though it might not be the same voice, everything that hits the ear, everything that hits the bones is exact. Even if the pitch is different, even if the cadence might be different, even if the acting is different, it feels like we all remember, and then is also plussed. And that's because Meredith has the wherewithal to communicate what is needed and the skills to bring in the right people to do the things. It could have gone another way.
Yeah, because it really is a relay race, right? Like, you know, like the writing has to be, you know, up top notch, and then like you have to pass it off to the actors, and if they drop, well, you still don't get to the finish line. You know, like it's really, everybody came together on that whole thing. Like we mentioned this to Guy yesterday of like we did this podcast for like a little over 2 years, and we were like, what if it's bad?
Yeah, like March 3rd, we kind of got like, well, the trailers are good, but they could just be a really good trailer.
Yeah. Yeah, there was always a world where this is done poorly, where the wrong people had their fingers in the wrong pies, and we all just go, yeah, well, that's kind of par for the course.
You're right.
But it's not.
Also from this one, we got one of the coolest Funko Pop releases of, the past probably 5 years with the 16-bit versions of your characters. So a lot of those have been coming to you at cons so far?
Some. Just a handful at this point. I think people are still like, wait, that guy does that? Because I get stopped a bit more. I generally tend to travel with the guy who voiced Phineas, Vincent Martella. So that is what's sort of the draw a lot of times. And then they'll come up and they'll be like, oh my God, you were Mojo? And so I don't think anybody's like going out of their way to bring the pops because they're like, I didn't even know. That's cool.
How many characters have you done have their own pops at this point?
I think only 2. I think just Mojo and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit.
Who's a blast, and I love him, and I voice him in Disney Speedstorm and Disney Dreamlight Valley. Some folks have the looks, but I got the luck.
He's a hoot. Yeah, I don't. Oh, Cubone. Cubone as well. I did Cubone for Detective Pikachu, and he's got a pop.
Oh,
he does. My mom, who is an avid Pokemon fan, has that pop on her shelf. So.
Does she have the giant one, the one that's like 20 inches?
I think she only did that one for Pikachu because then she ran out of room very quickly. Yeah. Jumping over to Leech.
Okay,
So,
yeah.
all of us who are fans of the original series, like we've, known the character for 30 years. We've literally seen him be near death on a Christmas special, like back in the day. What kind of pressure is there in voicing a character that is known, but also, when you start seeing these scripts, what moment is going to come. Like you said, it's either the lean in or the runaway moment at that point,
I'm lucky. I never had an awareness how much people loved Leech. Like it didn't register for me that he was as important because I always loved Mojo. Like I always loved him and like Wolverine and Nightcrawler. But, the Leech was like, okay, cool. Kind of reminds me of Short Round from Indiana Jones, which was something they were like, we've got you in here. Let's avoid any sort of dialects or anything.
Right.
And I said,
Okay, what if he just has very specific addiction?
and they're like, that's it. That's
There you
how we
go.
get away with it. And that's how it feels the same. Okay, cool. But yeah, so really, I think ignorance was bliss there, and I just got to rely on the weight of the scenes and playing the scenes, as opposed to worrying about how anyone was gonna take my version of the character or anything like that. Although, have you guys ever seen this comedian Jay Washington? He's got his Instagram is like Mr. J Washington, and he did some interviews for us with Ruby Justice League Heroes and Huntsmen, which I played the Flash in part 1 of that, and it was at, I want to say, WonderCon a couple years ago. He did this really fun interview, and so I wound up following him on social media. But there's a clip of him going around where he's just like, if anything happens to my boy Leech, I'm gonna be beside myself. I'm gonna quit the show. And so I trolled him a little bit. I was like, hey, you're enjoying the show? I had no idea people like love Leech like this. Somebody gave me this clip. Oh, that's so cool. He's like, yeah, I'm a Leech fanboy, man. I'm like, okay, cool. And I know what's coming. So I'm like,
And not even like a little bit ahead of time, like years.
oh, like 2 years. Yeah. So also on the day, every week for a few weeks, I was like, it's X-Men Day. Da-da-da-da. And like on the day or the day before episode 5 came out, I took one of the screen grabs of Leech like jumping up and
His hands are in the air and he's having so much fun on Genosha.
Oh,
was like,
the happy scene
it's
where he's with all
X-Men
the other
Day.
kids.
yeah. And it just was like this low-key troll for the room. Yeah, Jake reached out to me and he's like, you're a bad man for doing this.
That person.
And like I said, I occasionally will draw, and so I drew like an all-black picture just with a flattened beanie in a spotlight,
Oh no, God.
and I sent that to Jake, and Jake was like, oh man, but also amazing.
I know there's a lot of holdouts that Leech somehow made it through.
I hope so. I'd love to go back to work.
Right.
Let me come in. I work for scale.
Oh, I would love to see that picture. I don't know if you've ever shared that on social.
I'll shoot it to you. I didn't bring my phone into the interview because I'm a
no
professional.
worries. Yes. Well, we're constantly doing research mid-interview, so that's why our phones are next to us during these.
You know, I was going to send you several demerits. So
Yeah. I also texted Carolyn after you did her impersonation. She was like, "Stop it! What did he do and why?" And I was like, "I'll send you a clip in just a second. Give me like an hour."
well,
So you've been obviously jumping between different accents and stuff like that. I think I heard you once say that you didn't love your own Scottish accent. Is that correct?
well, I don't mind my Scottish accent. It's my Irish one that I had to use for Banshee that was bad.
Yeah, you said that at Scum, I think. When you did the interview,
I'm a bit of a stickler about accents, and while I think I can drop into a fair approximation of an Irish dialect, I don't think it's exactly spot on, especially because I've used a Scots dialect quite a bit more, like I did a fair amount on, and now I'm going to mess it up because I'm improvising, but there was a show called Dota Dragon's Blood, and the character that I did, his name was Maddox, and, oh, get out of here, you great mop, you know, all that. So then dropping into the Irish for Banshee, it was one of those things where like, hey, you're going to do this. And I was like, all right.
or like Bo and Meredith, like, "Don't worry, it won't last long."
They should have been. That's hilarious. Well, we did go back and we did some ADR. And at one point, someone was coming through the Zoom chat. And they were like, Rogue. And Meredith was like, can you turn off the microphones in the chat? And I said, no. Whoever that is fixing my Irish dialect. Let them fix me. So, you know, I appreciate the opportunity. I think it's something I have worked on a little bit since then. So hopefully even just the sample that I was giving here is a little better than it would have been prior.
This is the clip that gets you canceled.
Yeah, right? Jeez, they're like,
That guy was so bad. So bad.
And then the character that you did that didn't really have as established a voice was Gladiator. You kind of got to make that one your own, because this was really the first time we got to hear more from him from, like, you know, a perspective on his, like, galactic worldview. Whereas the other one, he just kind of punched things in 92, realistically. So, and were there any characters that helped inspire your version of Gladiator?
I mean, I think we all look toward a Superman with Gladiator. Someone who I would be very unlikely to be cast as unless it's young Superman. But of course, a lot of it was just me making sure that I had a bit more resonance and making sure that the mic was maybe aimed more below my mouth so that it's picking up a little more chest. You know, for the Empire. That whole thing. I listened to that and I'm like, well, I'm not sure that was me. They may have pitched that I don't know. My girlfriend was actually like,
Sorry, baby, I don't think that's you.
it's like,
They replace you after the fact with several different actors.
I'm not sure, but I do know that talking to Charles with the art, a wise Terran, you know, whatever, all of that stuff, that is me.
Yeah.
That's the important stuff. So, yeah.
But yeah, that for me, a lot of it was you look at someone who has a ton of power, and a lot of times those kinds of folks are afforded great stoicism because unless they are maladjusted, they often don't feel the need to show how powerful they are. They just are, which allows, you know, moments where they can just be and not worry that anyone is going to take them or take advantage of them. So they can just be in a room and say what they'd like, do what they'd like, and they don't need to show you that they can do that. Because they just can, they can turn it on. So I think that was sort of a lot of the headspace for Gladiator, which is kind of fun when you think about, like, just the range between, you know, you have someone who is that powerful and you have someone who has so often had power taken from him in Leech, which also, ironically, he is someone who can take power from others.
Which they never explore in the show.
I mean, his community, his ostracization, his, you know, physical mutation has taken away a lot of his social power and, like, his human power. So there's a fun sort of juxtaposition in his actual mutant talent, power, skill, whatever you want to say, for him to be able to take power from others because they've been able to psychologically rob him of a lot of power throughout his life.
That's part of that conspiracy that Leech made it and stuff, you know, because Magneto made it and things like maybe we didn't know we saw the power or something. That's still not.
I hope so. Like, he really is a very sweet thing. And, you know, I would love to see him, you know, as an adult on a beach with a Mai Tai. Some lovely purple woman who also doesn't have a nose. I don't know. Like, just let's Let's give Leech a happy ending.
We already touched on one of them. I was going to ask you if there was an ideal character you would love to voice, and you mentioned Nate Gray.
Yeah.
But is there a specific X-Men story that hasn't been in the show yet that you're familiar with and would love to see explored? And if so, is there a character within that you'd want to be a part of?
Oh, man. I'm a little torn because I think House of M is obviously so wonderful and so far-reaching. Civil War tie-ins I always thought were cool. I loved that storyline.
So you're saying like all the characters in those stories?
Yeah, I'll do all of them. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, who from House of M?
Well, like, wouldn't it be really cool? Sorry, the other one that I don't want to forget. Wouldn't it be really cool to hear Ray do all of the stuff that Scott has to do in Utopia?
Oh, yeah.
Like, wouldn't so much of that just be like, I am seeing peak performance right now? I've had to reach out to Ray a couple times to just be like, oh my God, what you did, that interview thing, that moment where he just lays into Trish. I was like, dude, this is remarkable work. Really, truly wonderful. Because he's also juggling a lot of balls by playing that character and trying to stay as close to the genetic core of who he is. I always admire that when somebody can keep those balls in the air. I think Bobby Drake would be fun through any number of stories. I don't think his is my story to tell, especially as he's joined different communities over time. I would rather see somebody who can really speak to that experience in that seat. But I always liked the character historically. I think being another sort of bad guy would be fun. And I think the inroad to where I can sort of justify playing more characters is probably dialect work. So someone like Toad, I think, could be a lot of fun to play. Yeah, because Toad was literally only in one episode of that original series. I don't think that the voice is recognized. Yeah, you know, it's an easier one to make your own, as opposed to one that was like, oh, this guy was in 15 episodes of the original series, or, you know, had a major run in Evolution, like a Lance or somebody like that.
We always joke about how in season 1 we missed out on like Pyro, Avalanche, and Mystique. And so they're probably just like on an island somewhere, like wondering what the hell's going on. So maybe that could be the David Errigo Jr. episode where just all of them.
Hi, my name is Mystique.
That's the episode, see?
Yeah, no, my girl voice is never like.
It's not the woman with authority. Not usually. She's the one instead who's maybe grown up in the valley.
As we're wrapping up these last few questions, David, do you have a favorite single line from the first season?
I would be hard pressed to decide, and I because I haven't gone back and like really written it down or anything, but I will trot this out, and it could be a paraphrase, so don't hate me, purists, but this is what I'll say to people when they're like, oh my God, I love Leech. I'll be like,
yes, Magneto will save us.
And then all the time they go, oh. Like, there's this face scrunch that happens, their eyes close, their brows drop, and too soon, man. Right. So yeah,
Magneto will save us. He told Leech not to be afraid.
You know, and people are just, oh man.
It's such an uplifting moment until you get to the end of the episode.
Right. Yeah.
It's like Tom Holland walking around telling people you don't feel good. You know,
Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good, Mr. Stark. Yeah. So of mine, I think that's probably my favorite. But then, you know, remember it. Who's gonna forget AJ's bit to that big Sentinel?
Of course. Rod, I got our last two. So any that you want to touch on that I haven't yet?
It's more of like the career stuff. I'm not a voice actor, but I know we have a lot of friends that are, and there's some that you've met already. But for anybody listening that kind of wants to get into it, I'm really intrigued because I'm kind of believing this too. When you were talking about like how there was a career path that you did well in, or you could do well, but wasn't yours, and then you went on this, and this is like your dream job. Like, is there something, maybe specifically for voice actors, maybe in general? Like, what was like that inciting moment that you're like, now I know this is not me, you know? And then that led you on the path to being half the cast of the X-Men.
I mean, it was sitting down with an on-camera commercial agent, because I had a manager in New York who got me a meeting with Paradigm. And I sat and I talked to this guy, Doug Keston, for like 40 minutes. And at the time, I had one of those like silicone type bracelets, but it was green and it said, "Sucks to be me, Q Phoenix." And I had worn that as a reminder that I could do things that scare me, because at the time that I got cast, I had never puppeteered. We got trained by this guy, Rick Lyon, and I played Nicky Trekkie, Bad Idea Bear, Newcomer, and Moving Boxes, because that was the track. And we learned the puppeteering, and when the reviews came out, they were very, very kind about my puppeteering. Like, calling it out and really complimenting it. And it was a reminder to me that I could do things I was afraid of as long as I put the work in. And so I'm telling this story to Doug, who loves theater. So of course he knows Avenue Q, and he knows that, there's a lot of vocal versatility there. You've got,
Oh, hi, Rod. Oh, sort of a Kermity kind of Bert and Ernie kind of thing.
And then you have Trekkie Monster, who's doing his thing. The internet is for porn.
and then,
Bad idea, Bears. Yay! More drinks, more fun. And the newcomer, who's kind of like what my Princeton would sound like. Purpose. It's that little flame,
moving boxes are doing their thing. Like, he knows that the requirements for that show are wide-ranging, vocally. So, in his wisdom, he took me by the shoulders, walked me across the office, sat me down in front of a guy named Matt Smith, and goes, "You two, talk." And that's when I realized Matt was a voiceover agent, and I was kind of like, oh my God, you guys are going to let me try to do this without having a Broadway credit or being a movie star? And I feel like what must have been going through Matt's head was like, it's McDonald's commercials, bro. But they did. They took me on and started freelancing with me, and I think I wound up doing like 1 or 2 small jobs with them. But in that journey, because I was still trying to do theater, I was doing regional theater, so we didn't stay together that long as a representation and client relationship. But during that time, that spark had gotten me to start studying, start reading everything. I was devouring the podcast Talkin' Tunes with Rob Paulson. I consider that my cartoon MFA.
Oh, nice.
Because, again, I learned how to be a voice actor, not necessarily just how to voice act. Because he had so many different stories. So I would run by the river and just listen to an episode at a time. VO Buzz Weekly I would listen to. I went down to Union Square and I got Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt's book, Voiceover Voice Actor, which I like so much. I'm a testimonial in the 2nd edition.
We'll throw a link into the description on that one
Nice.
if it has your recommendation on it.
Yeah, it does, for sure. And then the other thing I swear by is I want to be a voiceactor.com, which is D. Bradley Baker's website. And my most fun thing, you guys probably heard me say this at Scum, I was in a clinic with him and he goes, all right, so I've got a website and it's called iwanttobeavoiceactor.com. And if you can't remember that, no, you don't. And I'm like, that to me is so brilliant. I swear by that. All these things that I just listed are like pinned tweets, or my pinned tweet on my Twitter. Because it's nice to have somewhere to like tell people to go, to if they want to do this, go there, check that out, start there. These are the basic building blocks. These are the things that you can use to level up, to then be able to ask reasonable questions to anybody who's done the thing that you might be connected with, so that you're not walking up to them and going,
So my friends and my mom tell me I have a great voice, so I want to do what you do.
well, that's a start. There's a lot more. So I'll often tell people, like, check these things out. And then if you have questions, specific questions, let's talk.
There's homework.
But if you can't do that basic homework, you're not going to succeed here anyway.
That's so great. I love the story. Like, if you can't remember it, then no, you don't. Because like when I was in a band and we were touring, like I toured for like 20 years of my life or whatever. And I speak at these conventions. They're like, Rod, how did you tour across the country 3 times? Like, well, I lived on the East Coast, so I got my car and I drove west and we hit the ocean. I turned around and drove east. And people all the time would be like, man, I don't know if I could do that. It's like, then you can. I don't know what answer you want. Like,
Yeah.
You know,
There
you're
are
going to tour
things.
without driving. Let me know how that works. You know.
Yeah, and I was never like a big, champion for the starving artist thing.
Yeah.
I was like, nah, that's not how I want to live. But there are people who, like, if that's what it takes, that's how they're gonna do it. More power to you.
That's how I got involved in like YouTube and all the social media stuff, because we bailed on that as soon as we got the option. We were like, oh, we can post videos on YouTube and then get more views, and we played every club. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Funny enough, Rod stole my final question, so I
Oh,
don't need
sorry.
to ask that one for you, but that was fantastic.
I didn't read ahead.
So
Cut it and move it earlier.
the last thing I do have to ask you, so when we were deciding the name for the show, Rod and I went back and forth on a million different quotes from the original X-Men animated series. We decided on Cyclops is Waiting for Me because it was a funny moment in the first season.
Okay.
Ends up inadvertently being replayed in every single Logan, Jean, Cyclops, love triangle flashback. It's probably like 8 or 9 times throughout the original series.
Okay.
Would you mind saying Cyclops is Waiting for Me in any of your voices from X-Men 96?
Sure. Let's see here. All right.
Cyclops is waiting for me.
Cyclops is waiting for me. Cyclops is waiting for me. Cyclops is waiting for me.
Sounds like Mojo is going to go on a date the moment that
You
they
know,
leave that
he
room.
just
It's perfect.
He loves any attention he can get, Bubby.
I want to make a note because I know this is just an audio-only podcast, but he has the shoulder shimmy while he's doing Mojo, and it's perfect.
Yeah, we've talked about we should occasionally do video podcasts. This is one of those ones where I wish we did video for.
I tell you, I look a mess. I look a damn mess, audience member. So you're lucky that you don't have to see my face.
That was actually David, for the only time in the entire episode, talking in his real voice. That's how he sounds when he's not on mic.
Can you imagine?
Hi, this is David Errigo Jr., and I'm gonna be doing the cartoons for you with the voices.
Yeah! Okay, here we are.
People be like, what?
I'm actually looking forward to seeing, because we run all this stuff through some like editing stuff just to cut out big sections or, you know, like nuanced things, and it tries to transcribe it. And I don't know if we use the transcription, but I always love seeing the transcription because it tries to figure out how many people are talking, even though we use separate tracks.
Oh, you're gonna have to tell me about that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because there have been a couple times where some voice actors like, oh, there's 3 people here or something. It's like, okay, that makes sense because they're doing different voices. I wonder if you was like, you have to upgrade your subscription and we don't cover this, or so. I don't know.
You have 17
If that is
guests
the
on your pod.
case, I need to know. I need to make like a little badge of honor and put it on, like in my linear Instagram feed. I will make a badge of honor. Just, fooled the AI. You know, John Henry and the rail pounding machine for the railroad or the spike machine. David Errigo defeated the AI human counting algorithm.
I shall take you out, you dirty machines.
You guys watching Resident Alien? If you're not, you really should be. Alan Tudyk is just incredible.
I have not yet, but I will add it to my queue.
Totally worth it. Weird aside there, but
No,
Yeah, perfect, great.
Weird aside, have you heard the conversation we've been having for the last hour?
Yeah, I have.
Amazing. David, thank you so much for being on. Obviously, we'll share all your socials and everything like that, as well as the link to purchase that book. Anything else that you want to let people know to be on the lookout for from you?
I think Rod has a blurry spider monkey in a Hawaiian shirt behind him. So keep on the lookout for Rod's spider monkey.
That's fair. That's my cat Lucy, but all of that also describes her.
Gosh, what is coming up? Keep your eyes on the socials for various convention appearances and things like that. I can't remember which ones. Oh, I'm going to be in Roanoke, Virginia at the beginning of August, and that'll be a lot of fun. I'll be there with Ross Marquand and Cal Dodd and George Buzza. Or Booza. I always hope that I'm not saying it wrong. But that'll be really cool. You can come and get X-Men stuff signed by all of us. Other convention appearances will show up on my Instagram through my story or in the linear posts. And I do generally post about work when it comes out because I am attention seeking. And I need everyone to love me and tell me that I did a good job.
So go do that. Go find his socials and let him know how good of a job he did.
But yeah, so there's going to be... There's some video games in the offing. There's some more animated stuff in the offing. So just keep your eyes out.
Awesome. Well, audience, thank you for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure you drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram post about this episode. And if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, and CastBox. And no guest has ever known what CastBox is, but we still get views on it.
Yeah, I never done heard of that one. I tell you what, I know that there's a lot of platforms out there, but I ain't heard of that one.